Hi, my name's Elisha. It started with a text from my father. Just 8 words. Locks changed. You don't have a home anymore. At first, I thought it was a joke, a bad one. But then I found my clothes in trash bags and the safe emptied. The will, disputed. My name, forged. My grief, weaponized. Now I'm piecing together what they erased, memory by memory. They called it family. But if family can sell your childhood and still sleep at night, what do you call that? Do you ever wonder what really happens behind the front door once you're no longer welcome inside? I landed at Charleston International just past 7 in the evening. The air was sticky, heavy with early spring humidity and the faint smell of pine. I hadn't been home in 3 days. It wasn't a vacation, just a short business trip to Atlanta. But it was the first time I'd left Charleston since Mom passed away. My phone buzzed before I even stepped off the concourse. I thought it might be Verity asking if I'd landed safely. It wasn't. It was from my father. Locks changed. You don't have a home anymore. That was it. No greeting, no explanation, just a sentence. 8 words that cracked through my chest like a hammer through glass. I stared at the screen, read it again and again. I knew he was drinking again. I knew he was angry about the will. But this was something different. This wasn't a tantrum. This was exile. I didn't reply. Instead, I grabbed my carry-on and made my way toward the Uber pickup lane. On the ride home, I kept trying to come up with reasons. Maybe it was a joke, a cruel, pathetic attempt at a punchline. Maybe he didn't mean it literally. Maybe it was just one of his dramatic text rants, the kind he'd send at 2 a.m. after a few too many bottles. But the driver turned onto our street, and I already knew I was wrong. The porch light was off. The shutters were closed. No sign of anyone waiting for me. I stepped out, wheeling my small suitcase behind me, and walked up the familiar stone path. I pulled my key from my purse and slid it into the lock. It didn't budge. I tried again, slowly this time, then jiggled it. Still nothing. I tried the spare key hidden beneath the garden pot. Same result. My hands started to sweat. I rang the doorbell. No answer. I called my dad, straight to voicemail. I dialed Harlan. He answered, and before I could even speak, I heard him sigh. "I'm not getting involved, Elle," he said. "What the hell is going on? Dad changed the locks." "Look, it's been messy since Mom passed. You know that. Maybe just stay somewhere else for a while. Let things cool down." "I don't need things to cool down, Harlan. I need a key. I need my house." "It's not your house, Elisha. Not legally, not yet." I hung up. My hands were shaking now, and not from fear, from rage. I started texting people, my Aunt Carol, Cousin James, even Becky from church. No replies. I sat down on the porch steps. The air was thick with night moisture, and the wood creaked beneath me. My jeans soaked through in minutes. I pressed my phone to my chest, like somehow that would stop the feeling of being so completely discarded. Verity answered on the first ring. "He changed the locks," I said. "What do you mean?" "I mean I got back from Atlanta, went to the front door, and the damn lock won't turn. Then I checked my phone. He texted me. 'Locks changed. You don't have a home anymore.'" Silence on the other end. Then, "Do you want me to come get you?" "No, I need to figure this out first." "But thank you." I stood up, walked around to the side gate, and tried the backyard entrance. Also locked. The windows were dark, drawn shut. And that's when I saw them. 3 trash bags. Sitting under the porch light like they were waiting for the garbage truck. My bags. I walked over, unzipped one. Inside were some of my old clothes, rolled up in a way that looked more like eviction than packing. Another held bathroom stuff. The third? A photo album. My baby pictures. There was one of me in Mom's arms, sitting in front of this very house. The date scrawled in her handwriting. Elisha's first spring. I sat back on the grass, photo in hand. That's when I stopped crying. Not because I was okay, but because there was no one left to cry to. The door that had always opened for me didn't. This wasn't just about real estate. This was about memory, about blood. I looked up at the house, that old white siding and wraparound porch. My mother used to wave from it when I got off the school bus. She once told me, "This house will always be yours too, Elisha. You've given more than anyone." And now I was sitting outside like a stranger. A car drove by slowly. The driver stared. I turned my face away. I didn't want to be seen like this, like someone who no longer had a place to go. I picked up my phone and texted Dad, "Why are you doing this? Please call me." No answer. I was about to dial Verity again when I heard a rustle behind me, probably a cat or maybe one of the neighbor's sprinklers turning on. I didn't even look. I was too tired, too humiliated. The bag sat there like a statement. Not just, "You can't stay here," but, "You never belonged here to begin with." By the time Verity pulled up to the curb, the street was nearly empty. She didn't ask questions, just got out of the car, popped the trunk, and helped me gather the bags. I hadn't even realized how cold the night air had gotten until I saw my fingers shaking as I zipped them shut. Neither of us said much on the drive. The rain had started again, soft and unbothered, like it hadn't watched me get thrown out of my mother's house. When we reached her place, she handed me a towel and a warm pair of socks, like it was the most normal thing in the world to do for someone who had just been erased. I spent the night on her pull-out couch, staring at the ceiling long after she went to bed. The rain tapped the windows like it wanted in, like it was reminding me that no matter how warm the blankets were, I didn't belong anywhere anymore. By morning, the ache in my back matched the heaviness in my chest. I hadn't cried. Not again. Not since last night on the porch. There wasn't anything left to cry out. But something else woke up inside me. Not grief, not even anger. Clarity. I opened my laptop and searched for the email from 6 months ago, the one from my mother's attorney sent right after the funeral. There it was. PDF attached. File name clean and clear. Will final signed .pdf. I clicked it. I read every word, slowly, deliberately. The house, the land it sat on, the workshop out back. All of it was left to me. Not as a gesture of favoritism, as a recognition of responsibility. My mother had written, "Elisha has lived in this house, taken care of it, and supported me during my final years. I believe she understands what it means to preserve our history, not sell it." And yet, it wasn't mine, not legally, not practically, because at 9:43 a.m., when I checked the probate court site, I saw it. A petition filed by Lowell Parker contesting the will. Grounds, mental incompetence of the testator at time of execution. I stared at the screen, not blinking, not breathing. So that was the plan. I picked up my phone, called the probate clerk, straight to voicemail. I tried Mom's old lawyer, number disconnected. Verity walked into the room, still in her robe, holding a chipped mug of coffee. "You look like someone who lost a chess match before she made her first move." I gave a half laugh. "It's because I wasn't invited to play." She handed me the coffee. "Then it's time to flip the board?" It was almost noon when I finally went through the last bag I'd brought with me. I wasn't even looking for anything. I was just tired of standing still. At the bottom of my laptop case, tucked between some old receipts and a wrinkled boarding pass, I found it. A manila folder. Mom had handed it to me maybe 8 months ago, told me to put it somewhere safe. I never opened it, just carried it around like a charm or a curse I wasn't ready to face. I opened it now. Inside was a single piece of paper, a drawing, crayon on printer paper, dated in the corner. Elisha, age 6. It was a crooked house with a red roof, big windows, flowers out front that looked more like colored clouds. The sun had a goofy smile on it. Above the house, I'd written in uneven letters, "This is my house. I will always protect it." I ran my fingers over the drawing, smudged lines, bent corners, the kind of thing a parent might stick on a fridge for a week before tossing. But Mom hadn't tossed it. She kept it, and she made sure I'd have it when she couldn't say it out loud anymore. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at Verity's dining table with my laptop and a pen, making a list of everything I'd paid for since Mom got sick. Bills, utilities, prescriptions, home repairs. I noted every time I took time off work to drive her to appointments. Every week I stayed instead of moving out. Every grocery run, every roof repair I hired out of my own account. This wasn't about resentment. I didn't regret a single thing. But I had to show him, that I hadn't just lived in that house. I kept it alive. Verity walked by around midnight, rubbing her eyes. "You're building a case?" "No," I said. "I'm building a map." She sat across from me, looked at the drawing next to my laptop. "Is that from when you were little?" 6. Maybe 7. I don't know. I guess I already knew then. Knew what? That love has to be defended. She didn't say anything after that, just sat with me until I finished my notes and printed a clean copy of the will for my records. Later, as I lay on her couch again, I whispered something into the dark. It wasn't a prayer. It was a promise. When I woke the next morning, the skylight above Verity's studio couch had already shifted its light across the ceiling. No dream to shake off, just a hollow pressure in my chest, reminding me that yesterday had happened, and today would be worse. I walked barefoot to the desk in the corner. My laptop was still open, but a file folder now sat neatly on top. Definitely not how I'd left it. Verity must have checked it before heading out. I opened it. Inside, an envelope from the Charleston County Courthouse. My name printed in bold. I didn't open it right away. Official paper carries its own kind of gravity. I just stared for a while, then broke the seal. Inside, a motion filed by Lowell Parker. He was petitioning the court to declare me legally unfit to inherit, citing emotional instability, past psychological counseling, and compromised mental capacity. I read it twice, then set it down. There it was. He wasn't just pushing me out of the house anymore. He was trying to erase my right to exist as my mother's daughter, to decide anything about her legacy. And the worst part? He was using the truth. Yes, I'd seen a therapist. Once. After Mom died. Her name was Elaine. I told her I couldn't sleep. That sometimes I still made 2 cups of coffee out of habit. That I dreamed the doorbell rang, over and over. That was it. But to Lowell, it was leverage. I clenched my hands, shoved the papers aside, and called Verity. "I need Mitchell." 2 hours later, we stood in front of the house. Mitchell, our childhood neighbor, former Charleston PD, met us at the curb. Older now, but steady. "I'll go in with you," he said. "If there's no court ruling and you've got proof of co-residency, you're allowed entry, unless there's an injunction." "There's not," I said. He nodded at the locksmith, already at work on the front door. We made sure Lowell wasn't home. The lock clicked, and just like that, the house stopped being a memory. It became a battlefield. I stepped into the foyer and froze. The warmth was gone. The plants Mom loved, dead. Her favorite rug? Rolled up against the wall. Dust floated in the light like the place had been picked apart. We walked down the hall. The old safe was gone. Replaced with a modern one. Digital keypad, spotless. Mitchell turned to me. "You put that in?" "No." I didn't even try to hide the disgust. And I doubt it holds anything. The locksmith offered to open it. A few minutes later, the door swung open. Empty, except for a stack of new notepads and a pen. No journals, no letters. Verity whispered, "It's not about the house, Elle. He's erasing her." Room by room, the same. Picture frames removed, bookshelves cleared. Even Mom's quilt was missing. My old bedroom? Gutted. Fresh paint where I'd once taped my drawings. Empty drawers. Not even a trace of dust. We left without speaking. Back in the car, I finally said it. "This isn't grief. He's not mourning her. He's eliminating her." Back at the studio, I poured a glass of water. My hands shook. My chest tightened, and then stopped working altogether. No air, no voice. My lungs locked up. The glass hit the sink. I clutched the counter like it could anchor me. Verity was there in seconds. She took my wrist. "Breathe," she said. "In through your nose. Count it." I couldn't, but she stayed until my body remembered how. "He's making you the problem," she said. "But you're not." I nodded, though I didn't fully believe her. Later, I opened my laptop and started a spreadsheet. 2 columns. Removed from property and belonged to Elisha Parker. This wasn't a breakdown. It was evidence. Every missing heirloom, every journal, every meaningful item. I logged them all. Then I opened my email. To DeWitt, Lowell's lawyer. Subject: ongoing probate dispute. Message: if your client is confident in the will's integrity and my mother's mental state at the time, I assume he won't mind explaining why he emptied her home, replaced the safe where her documents were kept, and removed every trace of her existence. Odd behavior for someone with nothing to hide. I hit send. I didn't expect a reply. People like DeWitt don't engage, they intimidate. But I wasn't looking for answers. I just wanted him to know I saw everything. The next morning came slow and gray, the kind of sky that made even the blind seem tired. I was on my second cup of coffee when the landline rang. A dusty old thing Verity only kept for spam calls and the occasional stubborn vendor who refused to email. I let it ring twice before picking up. "Hello?" There was silence on the other end. Then a voice, cautious but clear. "Is this Elisha Parker?" "Yes," I said slowly. "Who's calling?" "My name is Marion. I was your mother's nurse during her last 6 weeks." I felt myself go still. "I wasn't sure I should call," she continued, "but I saw your name on the news last night about the probate issue. I kept something to myself, but I don't think I can anymore." "What is it?" "There was a few days before your mother passed. Your father came into the room while I was changing her IV. He had this manila folder, told her she needed to sign a financial form to keep her insurance active. She was weak, she didn't understand, but she signed it anyway. He told her, if she didn't, she'd be a burden." A burden. The word hit harder than I expected. It stuck to the inside of my throat. "Are you willing to make a statement?" I asked. "I don't want anything from this. I just needed you to know. And yes, if it comes to that." After I hung up, I sat with the receiver in my hand for a long while. This wasn't just about property. This wasn't even just about a will. He'd used her weakness, used her love for him, to get what he wanted. He hadn't just stolen from her. He'd convinced her to hand it over. By noon, I was on the phone with the clinic where Mom had spent her last weeks. It took some back and forth, a couple transfers, and Verity pretending to be my advocate on file to get past the gatekeeping. But finally, someone connected me to a discharge coordinator named Tori. I explained what Marion had told me. Tori pulled up the records while we waited in silence. "There is a signed release here," she said eventually. "It authorized your father to close all shared accounts, terminate further care, and handle any remaining estate issues. But we did flag the record. It was signed under questionable mental clarity." "You flagged it?" I asked. "Yes." But he insisted. As legal spouse, he overrode the warning. I looked down at the notepad in front of me, where I'd been doodling without thinking. The word override stared back at me, scribbled in thick pen. When I hung up, Verity said, "He didn't just rewrite the ending, he forged it." That evening, I pored over old bank statements I'd printed weeks ago, but hadn't had the heart to go through. Somewhere near the bottom of the stack, I found it. A transaction that didn't make sense. 2 weeks after the funeral, $42,000 had been withdrawn from a joint account once belonging to my mother. The account had been left untouched for years. I called the bank. He was the joint holder, the representative explained. It was within his rights. Legal didn't mean ethical. It didn't mean right. I hung up and looked at the stack of statements. The photocopied will, the flagged medical records, the drawing I made as a child, and now, this. A pattern was forming. And then I remembered something else. Months before Mom died, I'd backed up some of her digital files. She wasn't tech-savvy, but she'd used voice memos to talk her thoughts out, she used to say. I pulled out the USB drive from my old laptop case and plugged it in. Dozens of files loaded. Most were nothing. Shopping lists, reminders to refill prescriptions, holiday plans. But one file, labeled March 12th night, was longer than the rest. I clicked it. My mother's voice filled the room. Tired. Slower than I remembered. But still her. I don't trust Lowell with this house. Not anymore. He doesn't see it the way Elisha does. She sees it as history, as sanctuary. He sees it as a transaction. If I say anything out loud, he'll guilt me. So I'm recording this just in case. Alicia knows what to do. I closed my eyes. Not to cry. To breathe. This wasn't just permission. It was protection. Left for me when she knew no one else would step in. I printed a transcript of the memo, careful with the formatting. I added it to my binder of documentation, now over 2 inches thick. And then I opened my inbox and began writing a message to a probate attorney I'd found through a referral group for women handling contested wills. Her name was Ruth LeClaire. Her website was plain, but the testimonials were fierce. Subject: urgent probate filing. Evidence of coercion and financial misconduct. I attached everything I had. The will, the financial records, the transcript, the recording, my own breakdown of property removal, and a single paragraph explaining what Marion had told me. Before I hit send, Verity walked in with dinner, just soup and toast. She set the plate beside me. "You okay?" "I will be." She nodded, then noticed the transcript. "That your mom's voice?" "It is." She picked it up, read a few lines. "Strong woman." "She didn't start strong, she got that way." Verity smiled. "Runs in the family then." I hit send. Not because I was ready, but because I was finished waiting. The morning after I sent everything to Ruth, I woke up to an email reply stamped 6:17 a.m., sharp. One sentence. "We're moving forward." That's all it said, but I knew what it meant. No hesitation, no hedging. It was the kind of certainty I'd been chasing for weeks, months, really. Later that afternoon, as I sorted the scanned documents into folders on my laptop, Verity knocked twice on the studio door and opened it halfway. "You've got a visitor," she said, voice low. I expected it to be the process server, or maybe a courier. But it was Mitchell. He stood in the doorway like he'd been carrying something too heavy for too long. "Mind if I come in?" he asked. I nodded, waved him inside. He removed his hat as he entered, and that told me something was coming. Mitchell was raised in the South. You only take off your hat when you're about to say something respectful or serious. "I know you're going through hell," he began, "and I don't want to stick my nose where it doesn't belong. But I've got something. I think it matters." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a flash drive. "I have a security camera pointed at my driveway. Picks up the whole front of the street and a bit of your old property line. I didn't check it until yesterday. Habit, you know. But I saw your dad. Couple nights ago. About 10:45. Meeting some guy in a sedan. He hands the man an envelope, points toward your place." He set the drive on the table. "I don't know what it is, but it didn't look like nothing." I opened the file that evening. The timestamp showed it was recorded just 3 days before I got locked out. Lowell stood on the curb in his windbreaker, talking to a man in a gray suit. The man opened a leather folder. They exchanged something, an envelope, thick. Then Lowell pointed, gesturing toward the house with what looked like rehearsed certainty. The man nodded, made a quick note on a clipboard, then handed him a pen. The video wasn't high def, but it didn't need to be. I paused the frame when Lowell scribbled his name. It wasn't just a hunch anymore. It was a transaction. That night, I went through my inbox again. Buried in a forwarded thread from a title office was a PDF, a scanned property transfer document. Owner listed Lowell Parker, but the signature, Elisha M. Parker, in what looked eerily like my handwriting. I pulled out an old birthday card I'd sent to my mom 2 years back, placed them side by side on the screen. At first glance, it was close. But I noticed it. The cross on the T in Parker was too short. The tail of the H didn't loop the way mine always did. Whoever had done this knew how I signed, but not well enough. By morning, I was sitting across from Ruth at her office, sparse but sharp. A plaque on the wall read, "The law doesn't care how you feel. It cares what you can prove." I handed her the folder, the drive, the printout of the signature comparison. She didn't blink once as she reviewed it all. "This isn't just unethical," she said finally. "This is a felony, and a dumb one." I almost laughed at that. "You want to hit him first, or wait till he makes another move?" she asked. "I want to stop pretending he's capable of decency," I said. She smiled without warmth. "Then we file today. Emergency injunction to halt any sale or claim of ownership, and a formal accusation of forgery." I nodded. My throat felt dry, but I didn't reach for water. I just sat there, finally still. By 3 p.m., the papers were processed. Served that evening. Ruth used a professional server. I didn't want to be there, didn't want to see the look on his face, but Mitchell offered to follow and film it. Said it might come in handy if he pulled any stunts. Later, he sent me the video. Lowell opened the door shirtless, beer in hand. The man handed him the envelope, said nothing. Lowell didn't read it right away, just stared at the name on the label. Parker v. Parker, emergency filing. He didn't look scared. He looked insulted. The same face he used to make when I corrected his math at the kitchen table, when he thought he was too smart to get caught. That night, I posted something online. Not angry, not accusatory, just honest. I didn't use names. I didn't need to. "When someone forges your name and tries to erase your mother's final wish," I wrote, "you don't sit quietly and hope they do better. You speak, you act, you protect what's worth remembering." It didn't go viral. That's not what I was after. But by the next morning, I had messages. 2 former neighbors, a woman from Mom's old church, even a nurse who once helped during her final months. "I believe you. Let me know if you need a witness." I always wondered why he looked so nervous after she passed. That last one stuck with me. He wasn't nervous because of loss. He was nervous because he thought I'd never fight back. By the time the courthouse had received our filing, the ripple had already started reaching the shoreline. Quiet at first. Just a few uneasy glances at work, a strangely delayed email response, a colleague who canceled a meeting without explanation. Then came the meeting request from HR. It was Thursday, late afternoon. I'd just finished reviewing a presentation draft when I saw the calendar invite pop up. I knew before I clicked it what it would say. The office wasn't hostile. No one shouted. There was no confrontation. That would have been easier to respond to. Instead, it was, "We just wanted to touch base," and "Nothing is official. We're just doing our due diligence." The kind of phrases that sound polite until you feel the floor shift underneath them. One of the partners leaned in. "Elisha, we received an anonymous email. It raised some concerns. It mentioned legal proceedings and alleged that you've been treated for certain psychological issues that might compromise professional decision-making." I sat back. "Do you believe it?" "We're not accusing you of anything," the HR manager interjected, her hands open like she was physically pushing the idea away. "We just need clarification, that's all." Clarification, not truth, not proof. Just enough daylight for doubt to creep in. I told them I had a legal team, that no judgment had been made, and I was not disqualified from anything. They nodded, smiled, took notes. When I walked out of the room, I didn't feel relief. I felt stained. That night, I went back to Verity's place and stared at the ceiling. The idea that my job, The one thing I'd managed to keep steady through all of this could now be leveraged against me, felt like the final straw. But it wasn't the final straw. It was fuel. The next day, the mail came late. I was halfway through lunch when I saw the envelope sitting on the edge of the kitchen table. Ruth must have dropped it off. She never emailed things like this. The envelope was thick, cream-colored. Her letterhead in clean serif font. Inside, a copy of a letter sent to her office. From DeWitt and Associates. Signed by Lowell's counsel. If Ms. Parker continues this litigation, it read, our office will be compelled to disclose documentation and history that indicate prolonged psychological instability. This includes, but is not limited to, counseling sessions post-death of her mother, possible prescription history, and testimony from family stating patterns of emotional dysregulation. No threats, just a polite warning, polite like poison in tea. Verity read it over my shoulder and said, so now telling the truth about your trauma makes you unfit to speak about it. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She was right. They weren't arguing the case anymore. They were trying to destroy the witness. The following morning, I met Ruth in her office again. She wore the same simple navy blouse she always wore when things were about to get serious. She read the letter silently, then placed it face down on the table. This is intimidation. They won't release anything without a judge's order, and no judge is going to grant that unless you're on trial for a felony. Which, spoiler, you're not. I didn't blink. I want a protective order filed today, she continued. We'll include this with our affidavit and show that your father's camp is retaliating instead of defending. I can spin this into the narrative we need. No spin, I said. Just truth, no redactions. She looked up. You sure? Yes. They want me to be ashamed, but I'm not. Not of healing, not of hurting, and definitely not of surviving. She smiled faintly, then turned back to her computer. That night, I opened my post again. The same one that started all this. I clicked edit, and I added, yes, I saw a therapist. After my mother died, I didn't know how to get out of bed. I cried during meetings. I thought grief would look poetic. It didn't. It looked like silence, like checking the same drawer 5 times for a note that wasn't there, like forgetting how to answer, "How are you?" without lying. I asked for help. I received it. I got better. That doesn't make me unstable. That makes me aware. If telling the truth about my pain threatens someone else's narrative, maybe their version wasn't worth protecting to begin with. I clicked save. Then I turned off my phone and sat on the edge of the guest bed, eyes closed, listening to the rain whisper against the glass. A few hours later, I turned it back on. I had messages. From a woman I'd never met in Alabama. From a man whose sister had been institutionalized after a similar inheritance fight. From a retired nurse who'd been fired after reporting abuse from a family's caregiver. I thought I was the only one. I've never told anyone this. I didn't think anyone would believe me. I didn't respond to all of them. I couldn't. But I read every word. Lowell thought shame would make me quiet. But shame has no power once you stop apologizing for surviving. The courthouse smelled like old wood and copy toner. Familiar in a way I never wanted it to be. Ruth and I arrived just after 8 a.m., early enough to be calm, not so early that we looked anxious. She wore navy again. I wore black, not for mourning, for clarity. We sat in the front row, just behind the petitioner's table. Lowell arrived 5 minutes before the session started. No tie. Same brown blazer he'd worn to every funeral in the last 10 years. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes never met mine. Next to him was Trina, the real estate agent who listed my mother's home without checking who owned it. She looked less polished than in her ads. Makeup a little too thick, smile a little too tight. And beside her, as expected, DeWitt. Still unreadable, still smug. The judge entered, an older woman with steely eyes and a soft voice that didn't match her command of the room. This is a hearing to validate the will of Eleanor J. Parker, she began, and address allegations of forgery, undue influence, and breach of fiduciary responsibility. I exhaled slowly. Ruth started our side with nothing theatrical, just order. She submitted the notarized will, the digital backups, and the scans sent to me by my mother's attorney months before she passed. Then the video. Mitchell's footage, played on a mounted screen, showed Lowell passing the envelope at 10:46 p.m. to a man later identified as a notary with suspended credentials. The judge leaned slightly forward at that moment, her hand going still above her notes. Then came the signature comparison, mine and the forged one. My tail loops, the slant of the R. It was subtle, but clear. Next, Ruth played the voice memo. My daughter Alicia understands this house. It's not just a roof. It's where my parents planted every memory we ever had. If it goes to someone who sees it as money, not meaning, then everything dies with me. The room was silent when it ended. Even DeWitt didn't object. Then Ruth called Mitchell to the stand. He walked slowly, but spoke steadily. I've lived next door 32 years, he said. I saw Elisha come back home when her mother got sick. I saw her fix the porch, replace the roof, sit outside with her mom every morning, even when her mom didn't remember who she was. And I saw her father stand on the curb at midnight, handing off a document like he was selling firewood, not a legacy. Then came the unraveling. Trina, under oath, fidgeted as Ruth asked, "And at the time you listed the property, did you verify legal ownership?" "Well, he presented a signed deed," she stammered. "And did you check the chain of title?" "No, but I didn't think I had to. He said," Ruth cut in, "or he proved." DeWitt objected, but the judge waved it off. "You participated in the misrepresentation of this property," she told Trina flatly. "Whether knowingly or not, it's your responsibility as a licensed agent. That has consequences." Lowell stayed silent. For once, when it came time for the judge's ruling, I didn't expect suspense. I expected process. But her words still hit like wind against a cracked window, sharp, loud, final. This court recognizes the decedent's will as valid, properly executed, and consistent with documented intention. Ownership of the property is hereby awarded to Elisha M. Parker. All prior claims based on forged instruments or unverified transactions are null and void. Any future interference with her legal rights will be grounds for immediate contempt proceedings. There it was. No drumroll, no applause, just the sound of truth making its way into the record. Lowell didn't look at me when the judge dismissed the room. He gathered his folder, empty, I imagined, and walked out first. Trina followed, her heels clicking louder than they should have. DeWitt never even turned around. Outside, Ruth stood with me under the overhang. A reporter waited nearby, holding a mic loosely in her hand. "You want to say something?" Ruth asked. "No," I replied. "Not yet." I looked across the street at the bakery Mom used to love. Her favorite seat was still empty, the corner table by the window. "This isn't the end," Ruth said gently, "but it's yours now." I nodded. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I didn't feel victorious. I felt still. Sometimes when a fire ends, all you're left with is silence, and that's when you know it's safe to rebuild. I didn't stop for questions. I didn't pose for photos. I didn't answer the stranger who asked if I was the daughter in the will case. I just walked, straight, steady, past the courthouse steps, past the street where I used to park before Mom's appointments, past the life I used to explain. I wasn't explaining anymore. The morning I stepped back into the house, it didn't feel like triumph. It felt like air that hadn't been breathed in weeks. The windows had been closed too long. The rooms had gone still without sound. The scent wasn't betrayal anymore. It was something quieter. Dust. Faded wood. Forgotten corners waiting to be seen again. I stood in the kitchen, took off my shoes, and pressed my hand flat against the counter where my mother used to leave notes. Reminders to thaw chicken, buy toothpaste, check on Mitchell's wife next door. That counter used to feel like the center of our home. Now, it felt like a page waiting for ink. I didn't cry. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, breathing. The next morning, a knock came at the front door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, I found Harlan, my brother, standing there with a coffee in each hand. He looked unsure of which one to offer, so he held out both. "No milk in either," he said. "Didn't know how you take it these days." I didn't take either. I stepped back so he could come in. He didn't walk far, just into the foyer. "I should have spoken up," he said, eyes fixed on the floorboards. "I thought if I stayed out of it, it meant I wasn't choosing sides." "You did choose," I said. "You chose silence, and silence has weight." He nodded once, eyes still down. "I know." We stood there for a while. I didn't ask him to sit. He didn't ask for forgiveness. I wasn't ready to give it. But I didn't close the door on him either. After he left, I sat on the porch with the coffee he brought. Lukewarm now. But it gave me something to hold on to while I watched the neighborhood wake up. Later that week, I got a call from the hospital. Lowell had been brought into the ER. Liver failure, alcohol-induced. He was unconscious, no insurance, no family contact listed. Except me. A remnant of a legal document from 10 years ago. Power of attorney. I didn't ask how they found the number. I didn't ask what room he was in. I just asked what they needed. "Stabilization, transfer," the woman said. "He's not in immediate danger, but he won't recover without support." "Do what's necessary," I replied. "Bill it to me?" There was a pause. "He won't be told?" "No?" "Okay." I hung up. I didn't go visit. I didn't send a card. I didn't tell anyone. A few days later, Ruth called to ask if I wanted to file a restraining order now that the house was legally mine. I told her no. "He's not a threat anymore," I said. "Not to me." "But still," she said, "there's value in a boundary being official. There's more value in me setting it myself." That afternoon, I had the locks changed again. Not out of fear, out of choice. He could walk this town, he could walk this world, but he would never walk through my door again. The next morning, the sun spilled into the back room, the one I'd been preparing for months, even when I didn't know I was doing it. The floors were scrubbed, the walls painted clean, soft white. Natural light pooled across the new bench I had installed beneath the bay window. It no longer looked like a place where people were forgotten. It looked like somewhere they could finally be seen. I opened the doors to the gallery the following week. No ribbon cutting, no press. Just a small wooden sign on the sidewalk that read, "What We Inherit, Stories of Home and Survival." The walls held work from women across the state. Sculptures made from heirlooms, photographs of kitchens lost to fire or foreclosure, stitched fabric pieces made from dresses mothers used to wear. It wasn't just about grief. It was about reclamation. One frame hung near the entrance. It held nothing but a handwritten quote, centered on aged paper, with the ink just beginning to fade. "A home isn't what you're given. It's what you dare to keep." Eleanor J. Parker. I stood across from that quote for a long time. People came and went, looked and nodded, some quietly wiping tears. No one asked who I was. No one needed to. At the end of the day, as I turned off the lights, I looked back one last time. The house wasn't silent anymore. It had become something else. When I locked the front door that night and turned off the last gallery light, I stood in the quiet hallway longer than I meant to. The air was still warm with the smell of coffee from the afternoon. A few visitors had stayed late, lingering over stories written in sharp ink and stitched fabric. Some had cried, some had stayed silent, but no one had left unmoved. That was enough for me. Upstairs, the windows were open to the Charleston breeze. It carried a different kind of stillness now. No longer the heavy silence of fear or confusion. This quiet hummed with presence. I poured a glass of water, sat on the edge of the bed, and let the night stretch without needing to fill it. The gallery had been open a full month. Every Saturday brought a new batch of visitors. Some were locals, neighbors who once crossed the street when they saw me coming. Others came from counties away, drawn by articles or quiet recommendation. We didn't advertise. The walls spoke for themselves. I didn't need to tell them it was mine. The house spoke in my mother's voice. In every photograph, in every quilt square, in the creak of the floorboards we never sanded down. That weekend, I stood in the entryway watching people filter through the exhibit when I noticed a familiar woman with tightly knotted hair and a faded leather purse. Mrs. Daly. She used to tutor me in math back in high school. She avoided my eyes then, looking too long at the frame near the front. Mom's quote, preserved behind glass. "I never thought I'd walk through this door again," she said quietly when she passed me. "But I'm glad I did." I smiled. Not because I needed her approval, but because I no longer needed it to survive. One morning, Ruth forwarded an update from the care facility where Lowell had been transferred. His condition had stabilized, but his finances had not. I hadn't responded to the previous reports. This time, I typed only one sentence back. "Thank you, no further updates needed." I didn't hate him. That was the strange thing. I didn't wish him pain. I just didn't wish him here. He was part of the story, but not part of the space. 2 weeks later, Aunt Avis visited. She didn't call ahead. She never had to. I found her standing on the porch just before lunch, wearing the same blue shawl she'd had since I was a girl. We sat outside with iced tea and lemon slices that kept slipping off the rim. "Heard the exhibit was turning heads," she said. I nodded. She tapped her cup gently against mine. "Your mother would have been proud. Not of what you won, but of what you refused to become." I didn't have an answer, just a quiet kind of ache that didn't hurt anymore. Later that day, I walked into the room I had once called mine. My childhood bedroom. I had left it untouched until now, a deliberate decision. No fresh paint, no reclaimed furniture, just space. The walls were bare except for one, a gallery wall of empty frames. A small sign below read, "Stories still missing, tell yours here." Some guests pinned notes, others left dried flowers, clippings of poems, even a photo of a woman no one could name. That wall wasn't curated, it was claimed, and I loved it more than anything else in the house. That night, as I closed up alone, I lingered in the doorway of that room. My own story no longer needed a frame, it had a foundation. I walked the length of the hallway slowly, turning off lights as I went. The soft click of each switch sounded less like ending and more like exhale. In the front room, I paused one last time. Outside, the porch glowed under a lantern Mom had insisted on keeping, even when Dad said it was too old-fashioned. She used to sit beneath it, rocking slowly, humming to songs no one else could hear. I stepped outside and took her seat. The neighborhood was quieter now, or maybe I was just hearing it differently. I watched as a car passed with 2 kids in the back seat, pointing at the gallery window. Their mom glanced at the house, then at me, and nodded. She didn't wave. She didn't need to. I watched them disappear down the street. I didn't need to be asked if I was the daughter in the case. The daughter with the court win, the scandal, the inheritance. None of that mattered anymore. I was the woman who stayed, the woman who returned, the one who didn't let the lock stay turned forever. In the quiet of that night, with only the creak of the rocker and the weight of everything unspoken, I finally allowed myself to think of Mom's voice again. Not in sadness, in grounding. Forgiveness isn't something you give away. It's something you use to anchor yourself. It's the moment you stop letting someone else decide the shape of your life. He changed the locks once. I changed the foundation. The porch light stayed on as I stepped inside. The last thing I passed before closing the door was the old crayon drawing, now mounted behind glass in the entry hall. This is my house. I will always protect it.